In this episode, I sit down with top producing real estate team leader Crystal Tran to unpack the identity shifts, fears, difficulty letting go of control, and leadership lessons that transformed her from a successful solo agent into the leader of the state of Illinois' top performing real estate team. If you're building a team, struggling to let go of control, or wondering what it really takes to scale a business without becoming overwhelmed, well, there might not be quite such a thing, but minimizing the overwhelm along the way, this conversation, it's going to give you the practical leadership insights you need and can begin to apply immediately. Crystal's no stranger to success. She has her hands and footprint all over the real estate industry, in the app space, in the marketing space, and she leads a powerhouse group of more than 20 top producing agents who are constantly ranked at or near the top in terms of deals closed and money earned year after year. And as a certified negotiation expert and luxury collection specialist, Crystal pairs sharp market insight with mentorship, helping her team grow into confident, high-performing professionals. There's a lot of leadership wisdom and practical action steps that you'll glean from this conversation. So without further ado, please help me welcome Crystal to the show. Crystal, you've seen what I imagine to be thousands of properties in your lifetime. And I'm curious to know, if someone walked through your life the way that you walk through a house during an inspection, what invisible challenges would they have found during some of your most busiest years?
Hmm. Well, being in tuned with all the properties, putting that mind cap on of saying, "Hey, what are some potential issues that could be at risk here?" With the client, with the property, with the inspector, making sure all these parts are kind of coming together. But gosh, if someone was in my shoes, these invisible issues that would come up, it's like you kind of just don't know. You're invisibly waiting for the unknown because when you're going through this stuff, it's like hard to predict. Sometimes, after walking through so many properties, you can sense like, hey, this could be an issue, or I've seen this come up before. Um, but gosh, the invisible issues, I tend to not think about invisible issues because I always think that every issue is solvable. So
Mm.
my mindset is always like, there's things that are going to arise, and when they do, let's address them and in the best way that we can. So really, like invisible issues, like not too many I can think of where it's going to be bringing on. I think at the beginning it's very stressful, but as you get 2 to 3 years into it, it's like you kind of are ready to expect anything.
Yeah. So flip it now. Like if we take that same level of detail and preparation and stress management and we look inward for you as you're growing your number of deals closed, inevitably growing and leading a team during these busy years, what were potentially some of the beliefs or the challenges or the behaviors that were hindering you or posing quite a challenge just for you as a human going through that experience of growth?
Yeah, growth was hard because obviously time is a limitation,
Mm,
and it's a balance between servicing your clients, doing your own business, and also as the team was growing, I also had a lot of mouths to feed too. So the time was a balance because I also had to spend time in my teammates' business, right? So it wasn't just
mm,
only my business. And the way that I saw it was their business was my business. And at some point, I saw it becoming, at the beginning, it was just the three of us. It was me, Natasha, and Selma. And that was like that for probably a few years. So it was manageable. But once I started to attract a lot of other agents, or once I started getting referrals from other realtors that knew someone that was, trying to have success in real estate or trying to get involved in the business, I found that it was very challenging to say, okay, I need to figure out how to incorporate what I'm doing with my business with my team so that it really becomes one one business, right? Because at that point it
mm.
was like their business or my business. So the part that became really challenging was like, how can I get each of these agents involved with either a deal I'm doing or, in a way that wasn't favoritism, in a way that wasn't, lacking on providing for other top producers that had been with you for a long time, giving all of them as much equal attention as you possibly can. But I think there was a point that it just, I think it was after like my fourth or fifth agent that I had recruited or joined my team that I had fully decided that I needed to really go into this full time. I couldn't
Okay.
do both. I couldn't run my own, leads and deals while giving, full time attention to the team too. So, in order to do both, how it became both was, you know, having them work with my clients directly, having
Yeah.
them take on every buyer or listing lead, and that was a hard decision to make because it was a fight with yourself. The industry had told me, and what has shown for the longest time is top producers do most of the business. Top producers don't give away their best leads, they give away their worst leads. So it was a constant struggle with myself and with what the industry norm was. And I don't know
Mm.
if it's the Aquarius in me of always wanting to do stuff that was different, but it was very like nerve-wracking for me to say, okay, I'm going to try something different. And sometimes different is good and sometimes different is not good, right? Why try to reinvent the wheel, as they say? But I knew with the way that real estate was moving and the way things were transitioning, and just through, how lucrative I saw it was for my team, how much success my teammates were having once I had more time to focus on their business, that it just became like the very clear answer that this is where I needed to go. But making that decision was very, very hard in that moment.
So pull back another layer for us there with the personal struggle, the challenge, the fear of, do I blaze my own trail and go against industry norm, the nerve-wracking experience and stress of having mouths to feed, that chapter of life that was so growth oriented. Where were you quietly struggling or feeling stuck during that period of time?
Stuck was probably, knowing, I guess, the branding of it all. How did I go from being myself to then, and I was struggling with a lot of things in that time too, because I was trying to figure out all these, questions, these answers to these questions I had. Like, should I really brand as the Crystal Tran team or should I brand as Hunt Chicago, right? Um, because a lot of these people, Oprah says, put your name on everything, right? Those were some hard issues that I was, going through, helping, making sure I was hiring the right people at the time
Yeah.
when I had to. But it was the fight between myself. I just, I think there were times when I am fighting with myself, I would get frozen.
Hmm.
It's almost like you become paralyzed, right?
Yeah.
And that paralyzation, you don't I could have done stuff, and I'm usually kind of the person that's like, "Take action, take action, take action." But in those moments, you almost feel like paralyzed where you almost feel like you're going through this like moment of being stuck. And in that moment of like, and I would have people in the industry going like, "What are you doing?" Like managing broker would be like, "Well, what are you doing? Why are you hiring all these people? Why aren't you should be
Yeah.
going out there and calling your network. You should be going out there and doing the normal way people pick up business, right?" So I had to stay focused on what I knew my vision was. And when I say vision, I always say, like, you got to know how to get to the end point, right? A vision just isn't like, okay, I want to make $1 million and I'm going to have this big team. Well, what's the road to get there?
Yeah.
And so, in that time of being paralyzed and taking in all this information, I had to kind of ignore what everyone was saying to me, which was like, "No, you need to," like my managing broker, "You gotta work your network, you gotta work your sphere of influence, you gotta do open houses, you gotta do all these things," that was the old school way of doing it. And so, in that moment of being stuck, I was just struggling with all that. And finally, in that moment, I was able to see clearly what I was trying to achieve. And of course,
Hmm.
with the help of seeing these agents have success, I knew that it was like the answer was right in front of me, right?
Yeah.
And once I was able to envision that long runway, I was able to become unstuck. And then I knew
Yeah.
what my purpose was very clearly, and nobody could get in my way at that point. But yeah, it was a few years that I was like, "What am I even doing? Should I just go back to do my own
Hmm.
business?" Like, so it's kinda like, okay, do I take 2 steps forward and then take 1 step back? And it was always a struggle.
So when you talk about being paralyzed, I love the visceral description there. In my experience, personally and professionally, being stuck in a state of inaction is usually linked to some fear. In this case, you kind of alluded to maybe a bit of, these are my words, not yours, so please correct me, but fear of judgment from the industry. You're trying to do different. There's these expectations, these unwritten rules and societal pressures. How dare I go against the grain, if you will? Do
Yeah.
you feel it was a fear of judgment or rejection that was holding you back, or maybe even conversely, a fear of failure or success?
It was the fear of failure. Yeah. It
Mm.
was the fear of failure because the way that I was doing it, I knew that, I had this special, not that I, took any schooling on it, but I at one point in my life tried opening up an e-commerce business and learned a lot about the internet. Learned a
Okay.
lot about internet marketing. I learned a lot about affiliate marketing. And
Hmm.
with that knowledge I had, I knew that I could apply this to real estate. And that, like me, I was a consumer. I was buying stuff off the internet when it wasn't safe. I was finding people or groups or events or just browsing the internet. And now it's like the
Yeah.
internet has made us all so much closer. And
Hmm.
like my vision of that, I was able to then, push it into real estate. Well, how does that relate to real estate? Could it
Yeah.
be possible that someone finds a realtor online? And I thought to myself, yes, it's very possible because at that time, Zillow was selling, they're selling leads to realtors. So that means that they had an audience of, customers, sellers, or buyers
Hmm.
that were willing to go to the internet and link with some random agent they had no information about. And so, I think if I didn't have that knowledge and I wasn't so, I mean, I had a lot of trial and error in the e-commerce business that taught me that if I had a great product and if I marketed it well and I made a great impression, the sales would come. People would make a
Yeah.
purchase, right? And so taking that same concept and putting it into real estate and knowing that, hey, you don't have to hound your sphere of of influence to get business. And I think the struggle was at that time, it wasn't happening a lot. There wasn't anyone that I could look to in the industry and say, oh, look, that's what they're
Hmm.
doing. And I want to do that. And so I was kind of like inventing the wheel as I went, my own
Yep.
wheel. I mean, it was out there, but at that time when I'd entered into real estate, Instagram was around maybe for a year or 2. And
Okay.
every realtor was looking at it going, "What the heck is this? Some stupid juvenile platform," you know? And I was already like, I knew a little bit of marketing stuff. I wasn't afraid to touch a marketing platform to kind of design my own, you know, marketing for myself or a property that I was selling. And so that started to catch on. And I started to
Okay.
hear feedback from people, right? Like, oh, I saw what you're
Yeah.
doing. I see what you're doing. And I go, well,
Yeah.
they're seeing it, then other people have to see it too. And so I think as time went on, I just gave myself more reassurance to
Mm.
kind of block out the noise. And
Yeah.
when results actually started coming, then the people that told me that I was crazy for doing this stuff and people very close to me,
Yeah.
that I trust their opinion were like, "Whoa, okay, we had that wrong." And
Yeah.
maybe if I would have listened to the managing broker, that said like, "Oh, this is not feasible. It's really hard to do something like this. You'll spend a ton of money and a ton of time." But I had that vision and I just kinda locked in, and the problem was for those few years, like, I wasn't really producing a ton myself
Mm.
personally because I was either giving the deals to the team or I was spending more time on trying to figure out the internet a little bit more, building out the
Yeah.
websites, creating those funnels for clients to find us. So, it was really hard at that moment, but I think once I started seeing a little bit of results, then I was like, "Okay, I'm on the right path.
Yep.
We're going here." It wasn't full on success at the beginning, but I knew that it could have snowballed into something bigger.
So take us back even further then when you first got involved in real estate. At that time, how did you define success?
Gosh, just income, money, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's for me is like the most straightforward way, but at the beginning, that was the only way, right? I think my first year in sales, I had got my first listing from sending out an announcement letter that I had joined this
Oh.
brokerage, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna mail it to this little group of people, and I'm like, who knows what's gonna happen? And I got a phone call and I got a
Hmm.
listing out of it. So it was it was it was tough at the beginning, but I think it was like listings, whether you got a listing, whether you got a rental, whether you got a check, whether you made a
Hmm.
new client. I think that was really
Hmm.
important too. Making a new relationship also resulted into future success, right? That could be a future
Bingo.
client. And so those were the ways. Getting the respect of your peers in your office.
Hmm.
When I first started, I was working at Koenig& and Stray in Winnetka, and I mean, most of those women in there had been in the industry for a very long time. And so I was the new young bee coming in, and I had to earn their respect.
Yeah.
And, so it was a daunting atmosphere to walk into. It wasn't some young, hip brokerage. I was like, but I loved it. And I loved learning so much from those women. But those were the ways that I read success was,
Huh.
you know, my peers, my activity,
Hmm.
and the money. The money is always the
Of
biggest
course.
sign.
Yeah. So fast forward to today. Now, how do you define and measure success?
I define and measure success by obviously how the team is producing, but each
Huh.
agent individually is how I read success, right? I mean, we could all do something great as a whole, but if I was to break it down individually and say, okay, well, my top, my top six are doing great, but then the bottom three or four are not so great. So,
Yeah.
reading that success and saying, okay, everyone should be performing at a minimum, right? And if there are people
Yeah.
that are really underperforming after being in the industry for a year or two, it really shouldn't be like that because um, one of my teammates said it best. She said, you've given me all the best tools, the platforms, the leads, that I could have access to. I just have to use all of that and close business.
Mm.
Like you've given me all of the best tools. And if I can't do business, it's because there's something within me in my schedule or fear or, getting
Yeah.
consumed, whatever the case may be. So then, we look at training. Hey, have I not trained those agents properly, right? If they have all the right tools, are they not feeling confident with the information they
Hmm.
have? They're not properly educated. So so that's how I read success now is like making sure like when I talk to every agent that they feel confident about what they're doing. It doesn't mean that they have to be the largest producer on the team. Doesn't mean that they have to
Yeah.
sell over 15 million. But if they feel really good about what they're doing, then I'm doing a good job.
So I'm,
Yeah.
I'm curious because you started as a hard charger on your own, solopreneur agent, if you will. Now you're leading a team and it seems to me you're very hands on from a training mentorship point of view. What did you have to let go of from an identity standpoint to shift out of that just sell, sell, sell and into the role of leader, coach, mentor effectively?
I think it's that role of being a realtor, right?
Mm.
I posted something yesterday that says like, "Hey, most of you guys know me as a realtor, but I can go into a home and I can show it and I can negotiate it and I can write a contract and I can do all those things and I'm still involved
Yeah.
to that capacity. But what I had to give up is actually being in front of the client face to face and
Mm.
being in the transaction and being the person that goes through the house and advises the sellers how to declutter or how to stage or being on there with the photographer to say, take it from this angle. It's
Yeah.
giving up control
Mm.
of the process um, because I think, most top producers can't let go of control. They're very type A. They want to make sure that
Mhm.
their hands are on everything. They
Yeah.
want to make sure everyone's doing it their way. But in reality, I realized that that control was very hard to give up and that I had to trust blindly, that I had to say, hey, you, I'm going to give you the seller lead. There's a great person. It's a client I've worked with before. Go in there and, do what we've educated you on. Do it,
Yeah.
run it like how we've trained you. And so them going in there and doing it, hoping that they do it the way that we've trained them, it has to be a lot of trust because like what I tell all the other agents is like, you're just not in there representing yourself or me. You're representing the whole team.
Hmm.
So every time you go out there and you transact, every time you go out there and do a showing, just remember, you're just not representing yourself. You're representing everybody else on that team. So if you come to a showing in your pajamas, they're going to think everyone else wears their pajamas, you know? So it's been able to just like trust blindly, but not
Yeah.
blindly because we've put them through the training,
Hmm.
we've and we feel that, they're good partners for the buyers that we've aligned them with or the sellers that we've connected
Yeah.
them with.
That makes sense. So I'm curious. I think you hit a through line that is consistent with all entrepreneurs, founders, listeners of this show as this struggle to give up control. For you during those early moments when you were aware you needed to, I know it's easier said than done. What was the primary emotion that was present as you were navigating almost like this ascension to a new phase of being in your company?
There's there's always these things that you hear in life, right? Like constant advice. And the advice that you keep hearing is like it's the same advice. And people keep saying it. And I'm always a believer. It's like, well, I don't need to learn the hard way. Why don't I just take that advice as repetitive, right? So one of the advices of running a business and being an entrepreneur is you have to give up control. If you
Hmm.
really want to have a team that can go out there and execute and be efficient on their own, and that's always something that's been said within building a business, being an entrepreneur, right? And I see other people in this industry that haven't been able to give up control and that they're literally could do more with their business if they didn't feel like they had to be a part of every single piece of the
Yeah.
process. So so I think I just through the years have just always been very like I absorb things that I hear over and over again. And if I've heard it more than, 3 to 5 times and it's consistently being said, then I'm not going to just try to test it. I'm not going to say, okay, well, let me see if I can make this work with being a control freak. Because the truth is, it doesn't work, right? So why even try it? So that's kind of my theory on life and thoughts and business is like let's not make those mistakes that everyone keeps saying are mistakes. Like, let's learn from their mistakes and then like do it the way that they say it should be done. So it might have been hard, but I figured out a way because I knew that that was the only way to make a successful business.
Yeah, in listening to that, I hear like everyone almost like apologizes for like using cliches, but to your point, like there's a reason the same things are said over and over again because they work, because they're true. So you might as well heed the advice and move forward and give yourself a much smoother runway, if you will.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
I find it interesting, you have such a breadth of background in being on the agent side. Now you're leading, you're coaching, you're training, you're building, and I know you have your hands involved in so many things. I want to talk about your coaching experience and like leading team members for a moment. You've developed so many agents. In your experience, what's one of the biggest lies that those ambitious agents tell themselves that quietly limits their growth?
I just had this conversation with someone the other day, someone that I've been trying to recruit to join the team, newer agent, And the first conversation, I think he was probably 3 months licensed already and was like, I'm really trying to try it out on my own. And, I think, managing broker said I should just figure it out and I would be great. And I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I'm doing open houses. And then, 6 months goes by. I reach out to him. Hey, how's it going? I know it takes time, right? He tells himself, I know it takes time. And I'm going, and no, it doesn't. It doesn't have to take time. It doesn't have to take years to
Yeah.
figure it out. And I think that is the misconception right now. that is that it takes time. And if you're under the right umbrella, the right platform, the right team, it doesn't have to take time. And like
Mm,
what I said to this agent was, hey, listen, we give somebody 90 days to transact, otherwise they're gone because we don't have the time to take the time to train them, and wait around to give them a bunch of leads to see if it works out or not a year later. So so for him, he was taking his time. I go, if you been joined the team when I first spoke with you, you
huh,
would have been transacting already. So that's probably the biggest misconception is it takes time. It doesn't have to take time. If you can't transact within the first year, then there's something obviously wrong because there are people we've had agents come on our team and do a deal in 41 days. So,
yeah.
um there's probably a lot of them. I probably can ramble off a few, but that was the most recent one that I spoke with an agent and it's just like, you know, when we talk about being a new agent, that first year is so crucial. Like, you only get to be a new agent for the first year. And in that
Mm,
first year, everybody's watching you. Your friends, your family, everyone from your old industry to see if you're gonna fail, if you're gonna make it. So,
yeah.
when you have that misconception of it takes time, and then your first year as a realtor goes by, your friends and your family are looking at you like you're never going to figure it out, right? Like it's not showing instant success. And it might not happen all the time, but I think how you like pursue your first year within real estate is very crucial on whether you will be able to convert your personal, sphere of influence or not and how they perceive you. And just the trajectory of how you get started within real estate.
I love that answer. I hear and I see this in all the clients I work with. There's a degree of intensity, or I would also argue a degree of urgency. And like you said, that first year in this particular context is so critical. I often come back to like most people, and you've probably seen it too, Crystal, like on social media, they brag about consistency. Like, okay, like I'm consistent, I'm doing the small things and whatnot. But what I've observed, at least in my experience, like consistency, people who preach about being consistent are consistently mediocre. It's intensity that raises the bar and gets you to that next level. And if you don't have the ability to flip the switch and operate with that false sense of urgency or intensity, you're going to be stuck spinning your wheels in the land of mediocrity.
Yeah, I think there's definitely both are very important, right? The consistency
Hmm.
is always important. That's definitely key in what we do, but turning up the intensity is definitely how you could like rocket ship into success, right? That
Yeah.
that speed ramp that you need. Consistency is just important for the long haul game, right? But if you really
Yeah.
want to see year over year growth, then the intensity is what you need. And
Yeah.
whether it's running around with clients or being intense with your social media or being
Hmm.
more intense about how you follow up or, the being intense, like I think a lot of people tend to overthink social media
Okay.
too much and the videos that they produce,
Yeah.
right? They're trying to be consistent, but intensity is like just posting, get it out there and let's go and let's move on. And they're trying
Yeah.
to build like, "Oh, I'm gonna release 4 videos a week," it's like, "All right, no, let's go." We don't have time for that, right? So, there's definitely I definitely agree with you in that, and
Yeah.
our growth has been due to a lot of intensity that me as a leader, like, I knew that I had to be intense with the way that I marketed the team
Mm,
because it wasn't about me doing personal business anymore. It was about me marketing the team and doing all that stuff. So without being intense, the road to success would have been a lot longer. The road
bingo.
to getting these leads, would have taken a lot longer if we ever even got there, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
Spot
totally agree
on.
with you.
So we've established intensity is the name of the game for next level growth. You've demonstrated so well how much of a go getter you are. You're driven. You've got the ambition, the tenacity. What fuels that? Meaning, like, how do you care for yourself so that you can show up at your best as often as possible to perform and lead at this level?
Not getting overwhelmed, I think, is the most important part, not putting too much on my plate. As the years have gone on, I've been trying to figure out how to get more off my plate, right?
Okay.
And trying to manage all of that is really important, you know?
Yeah.
So this year, my goal and mission is to get someone to really help me with marketing in terms of, designing like the newsletters and postcards and meeting with our marketing person. So I would
Yeah.
love to get that off my plate.
Okay.
But, um, seeing what overwhelms me, and not overcommitting to too much. Not
Uh,
overly promising and under delivering will stress me out.
mhm. Yeah.
I'm a
Uh,
person of my word, and if I can't do it, if I can't deliver, I won't say it. So,
uh,
that'll give me a lot of anxiety if I commit to a lot of things and I don't do, right?
yeah.
Overwhelming myself with the schedule of just like
Uh,
events, family, friends, all of that stuff. It's just all a
yeah.
balance. And when you start to feel like your plate is getting full, you kind of have to say, like, not yes to everything.
Wholeheartedly agree. Big fan of the word no.
Yes.
From a personal, like, or rather from like a self-care standpoint, whether it be the gym, sleep, stress management practices, like what are your, let's call it essential practices that help you maintain optimal energy throughout the day?
Definitely gym. Not every day, but it has to be some kind of, "Hey, I'm feeling good about this. My body feels good. My mindset feels good." And it's not like, "Oh, you didn't go to the gym this week. You're a bad,
Yeah.
you gotta go." So, getting that guilt out of there, right? So,
Yeah.
getting your mind right is definitely important, not having that guilt sitting over your head. I love cooking. Cooking just
Ooh,
takes my mind off of everything because
okay.
I don't like making bad food and I don't like burning food, so you really gotta pay attention and not, like, slice off a finger as you're chopping stuff.
Yeah.
But as I'm cooking, I love the food, I love feeding people, right? And
Okay.
that always helps me too. Um,
Yeah.
but organizing my life is always good. That always makes me feel
Uh,
good and not feel overwhelmed. I
mhm.
love getting regular massages. It's
Yep.
always great reflexology. I started seeing someone
Okay.
that was actually a trigger point specialist, which is something new.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
I like that.
so a lot of, like self-care things like staying on top of self-grooming, making sure that you're just always hitting those marks to know that you're, mentally and physically taking care of yourself
Yeah.
as much as you
Is it
can.
Is there any one particular practice of either some that you mentioned or something you haven't mentioned that's your go-to when life starts to feel a little overwhelmed and chaotic? And this is kind of that practice that helps you reconnect and ground yourself?
It's cooking.
Okay.
Oddly enough, it's more work.
Uh,
It's I wish I could just say that I would sit back and, like, do some yoga poses or stuff like that, but it's generally cooking is something like when I'm very overwhelmed, I will just,
okay.
kinda get lost into a recipe
Yeah.
or try to make 3 meals at once. I don't know why, but it will just take my mind off of everything, and I'll just be fully focused on what's in front of me.
What's the most recent meal you cooked?
Um, I mean, it was probably Vietnamese food.
Okay.
Yeah.
What specifically?
Spring rolls.
Okay.
Spring rolls, it's like a whole cocktail of, a bunch of ingredients that have to be there, but I marinate like a lemongrass chicken.
Nice.
Vietnamese food is a lot of prep work. It might seem very
Okay.
fresh and all that stuff, but you're, washing a lot of vegetables, you're cutting up a lot
Hmm.
of stuff, you're making a lot of sauces, hoisin, peanut butter,
Cool.
sriracha sauce. There's, a carrot daikon mix. I have to have all of the vegetables, all the preparations. So it's a lot of work.
Huh. On that note, a lot of work. If you reflect back on your journey so far, take us through the most challenging chapter. What was that experience like? Were there moments of feeling alone, isolated, scared, misunderstood? And what was going on for you during that time?
So I think this was probably 2 years ago. A little bit, yeah. We're a Zillow Flex team, so
Okay.
we're, maybe, like, one of maybe 8 teams in the city right now, and that gives us, anywhere from, like, 100 to 150 leads a month, And recently, Zillow had acquired Follow Up Boss and really never used a CRM before. Believe it
Hmm.
or not, it was like, okay, we maybe had one at work. Once we closed the deal, then we would put it in. But I was never a CRM person because I just always felt like, just don't give me another platform on how to manage my contacts. I'm like
Yeah.
not that impressed. So when we had to switch over to Follow Up Boss, it was like a very big task because
Okay.
I had a team of 12 agents, 12, 15 agents at the time. And getting everyone to absorb the new platform technology that we had to all adapt and use a new phone number and use the platform. And that was a really challenging time while trying to grow the team, run the team, bring in leads, and then have to
Yeah.
train on a new platform was a lot. And at that time, I had realized that I'd gone to a Zillow conference in Vegas, and I was meeting all these top teams, and they were like, "Oh, well, this is Bill, the marketing department, and Jenna, like she's in sales, and this one's in recruiting," and I'm going, "Wait, that's me. I'm wearing all those hats." And
Hmm.
I think at that point, I was feeling very overwhelmed because not only did I have to drive sales and conversion and education and recruiting, I also had to help them, adapt to the platform, which was very hard because I had agents on my team at that point, like 6 years, and we were doing it the old fashioned way, you know? Um, and and so making that decision to go out there and find someone to help me. So the next person I brought along was an operations manager, Tamara Hirsch.
Hmm.
And I got very lucky to get introduced to her. She's great and, essential part of the team now, essential part of the growth.
Yeah.
And that was a really hard time because I was like, okay, now I got to find an operations manager on top of everything else I'm doing. So it was very overwhelming. And at that point, I was like thinking that I wouldn't be able to find someone as great as Tamara is, like, with all the skill
Hmm.
sets that she has and all the CRM knowledge that she has. I just thought that I'd be able to have someone come in and be like, you know, 40% of what she could do, but she's just been wonderful, and we have great synergy together, and,
Hmm.
and so it was challenging, but I'm glad I had those challenging moments because my
Yeah.
head was about to explode, but I knew at that point that I needed change. I needed to figure out
Yeah.
another way because whatever I was doing in the moment was not working.
Yeah.
I couldn't be bad cop and good cop. It was getting too hard.
If I interviewed the people closest to you, friends, family members, team members, and I asked them what success has cost you over the years, what do you think they'd say?
Oh gosh. Maybe more personal time with friends and with family, friends and family, I would say.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of weekends where I just like to work. I love working
Yeah.
on a Saturday and a Sunday because my phone isn't ringing like crazy. So I
Yeah.
could really deep dive into that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm a workaholic at heart. I love working. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I would say they would probably say, okay, it would be taking away more, personal time with them,
Yeah.
or doing things like travel. Um,
Mm.
one of the reasons why I set up the business the way I did was that so I could just be at the beach, working and running the team. And although a lot of what I do could be virtually done, I'm still here in Chicago. So
Yeah.
I think traveling, exploring the world, seeing the world, is something that I'm missing out on.
Okay. Any regrets on all of the weekends, how you spent your time so far?
Gosh, no. No, there's no regret in being where we're at right now today with the success we're having
Mm.
and the people that we have involved in what we're doing, the agents. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I love that. Yeah. So let me get you out of here on this then. I'm curious. If someone listening today is chasing that next level of success, but quietly they feel out of control, they feel overwhelmed, disconnected, almost like they're losing themselves in the process, what would you want them to know before they took that next step forward?
I guess this is like a baseball term, right? Like you can't get to second base if you don't take your foot off of first. And you can't be on both bases at the same time. So in order to elevate, to get to the next level, you have to take that risk and run to second. And you might get
Oh,
struck out, you might fall, you might trip. You probably will. But you just got to keep looking at the path ahead of you and just keep running, right? Like when you run for a second, you don't look behind and go start looking at first and go, unless you see something dangerously coming, right? Then you run back to first. But I mean, you just run like hell, right? And you just hope
yeah.
that nothing gets in your way or strikes you out so I think that's it. You have to take the risk. And if you're not willing to take the risk, you won't get the reward.
That's a great analogy. I really enjoyed that. I think it's incredibly relatable. Like I'm visualizing it. That was awesome. So thank you for sharing that. And then,
Yeah,
Crystal,
thank you.
where can our listeners go to connect with you, to learn more about you, all you do, and potentially working with you?
Yeah, so we are, YouTube, crystaltranteam.com, Instagram, crystaltranteam.com, and if they want to come to our website, check out the team, it's huntchicago.com.
Okay. And I'll include
Yeah,
all of that
thank
in the
you.
show notes below.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me. This was fantastic, and I really enjoyed it.
Me too. I really enjoyed being on here and sharing everything I can with you. So thank you, Paul.
That last nugget was gold. That baseball analogy, I don't know about you, but it was so visceral. I could picture it, I could feel it. I remember times earlier in my journey where maybe I was guilty of running towards second, not sprinting, but keeping an eye on first. And that was just one of the nuggets I personally pulled from that conversation. I hope that you were able to pull many insights and downloads, nuggets of knowledge as well. If you found today's conversation valuable, share it with somebody in your circle. They don't have to be a real estate agent or involved in the real estate industry to get a lot of value from the wisdom, the experience that Crystal shared. And if you haven't done so already, it takes 30 seconds to leave a genuine rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening to today's show. Thank you for listening. Make today great, and I'll catch you in the next episode.